Hi, I'm Sven from Tropos AR, and I'm here today to give you some insights on the Metaverse. I've been a technology geek for over 40 years. I've worked at one of the biggest game development studios, I've worked with PlayStation on the press side, and I own my own development company. And during that time, over those more of 30 years of being professionally in the video game business, I started understanding why it's such a big power and why it's very important for the traditional market to learn some lessons now, because traditional markets very often look at digital markets and they're kind of scared, which is even more so now with the Metaverse. Every time we go and talk about the Metaverse somewhere, we see that people from traditional markets basically take a step back. Our mission is to make them see that this is probably a junction for them where they can really make up for some lost ground. If you think about the Metaverse, a lot of people think it's some digital version of today's world where everybody has an avatar and you have a lot of digital content and it's especially fun for young people. I can tell you, this is not what the Metaverse looks like. The Metaverse looks more like this, meaning it's traditional markets, it's a traditional world, but it's right now, there's a lot of infrastructure from the Metaverse which is already in it. So 5G, spatial computing, IoT sensors, blockchain, new ways of data management, AR clouds, VR clouds, all the stuff which you don't see today but is already there is going to be a huge part of the Metaverse. If you look at the Metaverse from afar, you can distinguish 7 layers. Now, the 5 internal ones, if you're not working to be a part of the Metaverse or to build a part of the Metaverse, they are actually not that important to you. What's important for the broader market is those outer 2 layers. The experience layer, which is the layer where we're going to build experiences which are both physical and digital, and the discovery layer, which is which platform or which technology we will be using to discover those experiences. The discovery layer in a lot of types of media right now, be it video, social media, radio, they already have their big stakeholders and it's going to be very hard to change anything about that. But there's a few new types of media coming in where they're basically still a blue ocean. VR is one of them. There's a lot of possibilities in VR, but the especially big one is augmented reality. Meaning people have been seeing augmented reality for a long time, so sometimes I get asked the question, why will augmented reality be a thing now? I've used it in the past. We've seen Pokemon Go come and go. We've seen some clothing. You can fit some shoes. What's the big difference, or what's all the fuss about? Do remember that before you had Facebook, you also had years of social media. Before you had smartphones, you also had before you had iPhone, you also had a lot of smartphones. So that difference between the AR, which is basically almost all-time web AR, and native AR, which is coming very soon, that's a big leap. You can compare it to, you can play video games within your browser, or you can play video games on a PlayStation, and for those of you who have seen both, I can tell you they're basically not to be compared. That's the same with native augmented reality. Native augmented reality will bring digital content into the real world. And by that, it's not just going to be on those few flat screens you have, because right now digital content is your flat screen, your iPad, your computer screen, and your phone, which is 1 square meter, maybe 2 square meters if you have a very big television at home. But going from there into the real world is going to really make a big difference. So if we say digital content within the real world, you have to imagine that right now we have the technology to create a shopping experience where there's clothing floating around above the people who are in the shopping streets. There can be reduction coupons within that clothing. We can allow shopkeepers to team together and say, hey, maybe if you buy women's clothing here and you go to another store in the same city who sells women's shoes, then you can have a free coffee. All those things with AR, you can very easily set up, and you can, with blockchain, you can very easily also make the transactions on all that work. So, and it's not even going to stop there, because why stop at content within like spaces where there's a lot of people? If you have very good customers, you can even on their birthday send them a birthday gift and drop it right in their backyard. It's not going to end there. Product presentations, massive product presentations floating above a big square in the city. Those things can be easily done. You can bring art outside of where art is now, outside of musea, and you can place it into the real world where basically it should belong. And especially for brand engagement and for fan engagement, for big venues, big events like sporting events, you will be able to go to a sporting event. There will be characters, AR characters outside of the venue greeting you. You will be able to play games with all of the people within the stadium before the game starts or during halftime, and you will get rewarded for those games. And those rewards you will be able to take home and to create your own, let's call it a digital trophy cabinet, which is ever growing, which is your own legacy within the digital world. That part, rewarding people and allowing them to create a digital legacy, is one key component of the metaverse, which will change a lot of things. Right now, there's a lot of big tech companies that also know that the metaverse is going to swallow everything which came before it. So do know that it might look, what they offer right now might look very interesting, but those companies, they want to basically get you into their miniverse. And the actual metaverse, where you're free to do whatever you want and you can keep on owning the data you gather and you can keep on working together without anybody setting the rules, is a lot different than the miniverse within that metaverse, because you will always have to play by somebody else's rules, and those rules can be changed by them without you having any say in it. So right now, there's new technology which allows you to put an AR component into any existing app and allow the users of that brand to experience content within the digital world, maybe at their home, maybe out in the world, maybe in a store itself, to experience that through native AR, which is more or less a video game or special effects from a movie coming to life before your eyes, and doing that while also keeping the one-on-one connection with your users and having the data ownership divided by the user itself and the brand who he worked with. So those two things, which in the past we really let go, because in the second generation of the internet, which was dominated by social media, we gave up all the freedoms we had from the first generation when it was still browsers and websites. For convenience sake, we moved to social media and we all started communicating there, but those people now set the rules. Normally brands don't have access to or direct access to the data which is gathered. They have to pay for it time and time again. And also the younger demographic, because there's always a step in between, it's very hard to attract the younger demographic. With native AR, that younger demographic is a lot easier to get in touch with. That brings me back to my early years, to the Atari years, because what I learned through 30 years of being in the video game sector professionally is that what makes social media work and what makes video games work, especially today with League of Legends or Fortnite, it's not that the product itself is so amazing, is that the gamification layers on top are almost impossible to withstand. And gamification is nothing more than psychology, meaning we as a species have a very hard time in starting a task, almost completing it, and then leaving it uncompleted. If you look at a lot of social media where there's always something to do, you can endlessly scroll down, there's probably some likes in there or some video you haven't seen from a friend, or if you play Fortnite, at the end of a Fortnite game, there's always this big reward which you still need 10 more experience points for, just if you start that next game. So people are triggered to do just that, just to get that little hit of dopamine. And that thing, which is now overused in a lot of digital markets, because augmented reality, native augmented reality, brings digital content to the physical world, you can also bring gamification to the physical world. If you look at Fortnite, Fortnite is not that fun a game. Doing shopping, online shopping, is basically nowhere near as fun as going out into the street with your friends and doing some shopping there. But it's the gamification layers on top which make it so hard to withstand. And our message here today is, if you bring augmented reality to your market and add just a little bit of gamification and interconnect all those markets, you can really, really make a big difference. Because we truly believe, just like Pokemon Go got, I think now over 1 billion people, gamers, which aren't the easiest guys to get out the door, which got 1 billion people out onto the streets, we have all the technology possibilities to do the same for traditional markets. So doing shopping in the future, going to see a sporting match in the future, or doing any other out-of-home consumer experience can, with the metaverse and especially with the visual layer of augmented reality, be turned into a complete new experience. To us, we always have seen the real physical experiences as having something which no purely digital experience can match. Let's be honest, if you look at social media, there's not really that, what's social about liking a friend's cat or putting a post on of yet another fixed up or touched up picture. Those things have no real substance underneath. Traditional markets do have substance underneath. So with a small layer of gamification and with fan engagement, which starts way sooner and prolongs the fan engagement a lot longer, you can make a really big difference. So I want to leave you today with 3 lessons. Lesson number 1 is gamification is there, augmented reality is there, but do know that people that will overuse it will end up the same way social media has ended up now. Everybody still does it a lot. Do they still like Facebook? Do they still like Instagram? Not as much as they used to. Traditional markets have a soul. It's too important to overuse gamification and to kill what's underneath it. So that is certainly lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is, right now, in Snapchat already, and probably pretty soon within Facebook and other types of social media, they will start bombarding you with options of doing all kinds of stuff in augmented reality. Do know that what they're presenting, they might call it the metaverse, but it's not. It's their massive miniverse within the metaverse. And in the beginning, just like with Facebook, it might look like an amazing place to be in, and it might allow you to not spend that much energy and to immediately have output. But if all brands select those few platforms will set the rule again, and we will be on track for another 15 years of having an internet where there's a lot of boundaries and a lot of rules set by just a few companies. So if you're going to look into the metaverse, do realize that the actual metaverse is one where there's no rules and no people in between you or your end consumer. And the third lesson, which is, I think, the most important lesson, technology these days is going faster and faster. And I can tell you, as being somebody who's been in this market for years, it's going to go even faster in the near future. the evolution we had in the last 100 years is nothing compares to the evolution we'll have in the next 10 years. So with the coming of the metaverse or the spatial web or whatever you call it, a lot of new opportunities will show up, but you will need inside your organization people who are really educated and whose daily business it is to keep on being educated. Because I want to leave you with this most important quote. We're going to be eternal students. So this quote from Master Yi, a true master is the eternal student, couldn't be more right. And what's especially cool about this is that this is not a Chinese, Master Yi is not a Chinese philosopher like Sun Tzu or some of the other famous ones. This is actually a video game character, because in the future, a real important knowledge is not only going to come from the ancient times or from physical people, it can come from digital people as well. That is the power of the metaverse. Thank you.